Okay. Okay. Should I start?
Respected sir, Dr. Prasanna sir, I'm really thankful to you. I mean, no doubt you are busy very much today. So, dear learner, I welcome today's class. So, today is you had changed the time. Instead of 4, we are going to start now. But tomorrow onwards, same time, 4 o'clock, you will join. So I request all of you to bear with us the whatever the difficulty you would face. So once again I welcome you, Prasanna sir, to our today's class. Thank you very much. Now over to sir.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Panigrahi, a very good friend. And dear participants, I'm extremely sorry, my deep apology that because of some medical reason, so I'm late. But tomorrow onwards, I'll be in time at 4. So thanks for the opportunity, because this is a very different platform when where you interact with people, but you do not see many of their faces, and it's not direct contact, but still this is a great help also to interact with many people who are interested in the subject. I think for today's class, the I think this is a paper you all know. This is about anthropology and research methodology that is used in anthropological research. The paper is Anthropology and Methods of Research. So before we really discuss, and I'm sure all of you must have gone through the material provided to you by let me give you a very brief idea and introduction about what is to come in coming days that we'll be discussing. So can I just put off my video, I think my figure, so that we can discuss? Uh, and if you have any issue, if you cannot hear me, if it is not understandable, you can always ask me. You can stop me, I will explain it again. Uh, so Let us first also revisit and again repeat what you must have heard, what you must have read, what anthropology means. So many of you already know that anthropology is study of man in time and space. Anthropo means human, and logy means discourse or to study. So study humans. So then the question comes: what kind of human? Who is that human? Where do those human beings live? The answer is anthropologists are interested in studying humans of all different kinds of human and his society or her society across the globe. All over the world, there are different kinds of human cultures, societies, and different kinds of people. If you see them from their physical feature point of view, or the cultural and social practices they follow, so, anthropologists are interested in understanding and in studying all these different kinds of humans or man. When I say man, it also includes women. So, all different kinds of man living in different parts of the globe. So, when we define anthropology, a study of man in time and space, that time means not a specific period of time, all different kinds of time period that is possible, whether it is distant past or present. Yes, somebody asked anything? Oh, okay. And then when I say time and space, space means geography, location, area, means people living here and there, people living near to me and far away from me. So at different geography, different places where people live. So anthropologists, in simple terms, anthropologists are interested, or anthropology as a discipline is interested in studying all different kinds of human beings living here and there at different places. Then it makes us very difficult, because if you are interested in all different kinds of people living everywhere, then it makes it difficult for all of us to study them, to understand them, because it will be very, very diverse. So that is why anthropology also interested in studying the diversity, at the same time the similarities between people, between groups, and the diverse are the differences between people. So it also involves intrinsically in a comparative method, because if you want to understand people living in Odisha, how do they behave to a particular social phenomena, then automatically you'll have to in your mind how people living in Kerala, how people living in Afghanistan, in Europe, in USA, because they all are human beings. So how do they behave to a particular social stimuli? Then you naturally have a comparative framework in your mind to compare different kinds of people. So this is one inherent approach in anthropology. Then anthropology also combines both social and cultural aspect of human and biological aspect of human. So what does it mean? It means if you just consider yourself being an individual belonging to human species, then you also have a physical being. You are a physical animal, like any other animal that has evolved from simpler form to the complex. And also, simultaneously, you are a biological being, and also you practice certain social and cultural. You are also social and cultural being because you belong to a specific culture, specific society. That is why you have certain kind of practices which is different from others. So it combines both the biological and social or social science perspective. So that is why anthropology is a very unique discipline that equally combines both it combines both social and biological aspects of human. And then in this paper, so this is about anthropology. And if this is the area of anthropology that covers biological and social, and what are the other areas? And if it is distant past, for example, it is before history, because history is something where you have recorded documents, you have written evidences. But if you go beyond history, before what has happened before history, there were also human beings before history, so that is called prehistory. So this comes under prehistoric archaeology. This is one of the sub branches of anthropology. And then, and because humans, if anthropology is study of human, humans are also a very, very unique animal because among all the animals, human are the one that has a language that speaks. Other animal might be speaking, might be using symbols or words to communicate among other members of the group. But humans are only animal that uses sounds, symbols, and characters to communicate with other members of the group. And they also have codified those symbols in the form of language that can be transmitted and transported to other groups for wider communication. No other animal has this. So that is why, with the evolution of man, both as a biological being and also as a cultural being, language has become an important tool and a cultural matrix to explain the species or as human. So that is why linguistic anthropology is also another important branch. Then similarly, we have different branches of anthropology like economic anthropology to understand how people transact goods, how people produce things and then supply it for others to use. Then you also have political anthropology to understand how people take decisions. You also, so like any other social science discipline, if you use it anthropology as suffix, then it becomes a new branch. It's not as a fashion, but because human society and human culture is very, very complex to understand, that is why I divide it into different sub branches to focus on how humans deal with that or how those area of knowledge can be dealt, keeping human at the center. But there are four major branches like biological or physical anthropology, social or cultural anthropology. Third is prehistoric archaeology that deals with what how human society and culture uh, started and spread in the prehistoric period, and what are the evidences and what are the remnants that we have from those human civilizations or cultures that helps us to understand the human past or the societies of human beings before history. And then the fourth is language. How language can be a tool to understand human culture, both in the past as well as in the present contemporary period. So these are the four branches. Now let major branches. Then you have all different. For example, you also have anthropology of health or medical anthropology. That also tries to understand how illness, sickness, and care, health care, has evolved in human society, how people fall ill or sick, and how they become normal. So, what are the practices they have? How different societies, for example, tribal societies, rural societies, urban societies, how do they deal with illness and sickness? So, this again another interesting branch because people use different methods to become normal after they become sick or ill. So that is why, if these are the fields of anthropology, then now you can imagine how it would be very, very complex to understand human beings living in different parts of the globe, different time periods. So, what are the tools or what are the methods that this discipline will use to understand all those differences? Because this is this like any other science. For example, if you take botany that studies plants, zoology that studies animals, or you use other like chemistry, physics that deals with matters, then they also have methodology to understand physical phenomena or biological life phenomena. So similarly, anthropology, since it is dealing with humans that are very, very complex being, then it must have methodology. And what is that methodology? So this is roughly going to be the focus of this discussion. What are the tools and techniques? What are the methodology that anthropologists use in order to understand human past, human present, and the interaction between individuals within the group and interaction between different groups living in different parts of the globe, belonging to different society and culture. So this is what is going to be the topic that we will be discussing in coming weeks. As per your syllabus, I think what is so interesting in this unit is the first is emergency of anthropology as a science of human beings. So anthropology, we say that anthropology is a colonial construct. This is a discipline that has started with colonial masters. Especially, it refers to Europeans when they went to different parts of the globe, especially to Asia, Africa, and North America, to set their colonies for different, mainly for expansion of trade and commerce. So when they went, they came across with different kinds of people belonging to very different, diverse cultures. So they wanted to study them. They wanted to understand their culture so that that would help them in their daily day-to-day administration. So anthropology as a discipline grew from the colonial expansion. But since human has both the biological angle and social and cultural angle, so this emerged as a discipline mainly in 18th century, you can say. But it grew in the 19th century and with advance of science and technology. And then anthropology as a holistic science and human being as its subject matter. So anthropology is a holistic science. What this holistic means? Holistic means understanding completely or in totality, or we say 360-degree. It means understanding human and his society from all possible angles. If you can imagine a pie chart, a circle, then when you cut a cake from the birthday cake, if you can imagine, so when you cut a piece of cake, it is like live in a society which has a different aspects, different institutions like social institutions, political institutions, economic institutions. And when you just study one pie of the cake and try to understand the whole, like understanding the economic activities of a village, of a society, or a community. You can only appreciate it if you understand the whole completely. And in order to understand the whole, you need to study one small part of it. Or otherwise, you can say, if you want to understand only part of it, until unless you understand the full or the whole, it will be difficult to appreciate the part. So, holistic has this meaning that in order to understand a society or the complex behavior of individuals living in a society, then you must try to understand all possible facets of life, all different kinds of angles that this society has. And it is only human interaction, because anthropology primarily focuses on human. And the third thing is aspects and importance of studying diversity and variation in anthropology. As I said earlier, so different aspects of human being. As I said, if people living in time and space, if they are living in a space which is very, very distant, if I want to study how people deal with illness and sickness in Africa and how it is different from people living in India, then what I'm doing, I'm trying to understand the diverse way people react to if something happens to them. So those diversities, and diversity also has many meanings. One of the meaning is how people living in Africa have very dark skin color, and people living in India has brown color, and Europe white skin color, or in China or Nepal or Japan, yellow mongoloid skin color. So this is also one aspect of studying diversity. Diversity of body physic or diversity of physical features of body, skin is being one. So this is about studying diversity. Similarly, if you go to understand the cultural and social practices of people living in different areas, so that also gives an impression about diversity and the variation that these people have. And when anthropologists study it, they the total experiences of a society. When I say society, you can just for just for the sake of understanding, you can imagine of a village or a colony where you live. Suppose in that village, people have very diverse practices. So, in order to understand those diversity, you have to divide those experiences, those society into different aspects: economic aspect, political aspect, cultural aspect, psychological aspect, biological aspect. So if you divide, then you understand, okay, if I compare this particular how people behave with respect to what they produce and what they sell, and how this circulation of production and consumption takes place. So in society A, if you want to compare it with society C, you will find there is a pattern, similar kind of practices. There are also differences. Then what are those differences? What are those metrics to understand those differences? So this is what is studying diversity, both physical or biological diversity, as skin color is example, and then social, like economic practices in between two different groups. So this is about studying diversity and variation in anthropology. And the fourth one is anthropological study of diversity and variation in Indian context and its related issues. Like India is also, as a society, human society, is also very unique and also very different from many other societies in the world. For example, caste system. Caste system is a hierarchical system. You have such examples in many parts of the globe, but still it is an unique to India. And if you understand, I'm just giving an example. So anthropologists are also interested in the diversity and variation, how people behave, the way they behave when they practice their religion or spiritualism, when they visit a temple or church or mosque, wherever they go, place of worship, and the kind of dress pattern they have, the kind of language. So all the way they celebrate different occasions. So they behave differently. So why do the people behave differently? And what makes them different, especially in the context of India? So that would also be interesting to study. Then relevance of comparative method in anthropology. As we discussed, comparative method is an inherent method in study of anthropology. You must have studied this. Anthropology, if you try to understand the core values of anthropology, I would I would just give you 3 points to you. There may be many. One is anthropology is a holistic science or holistic understanding of human society and culture. As I explained, holistic means totality, understanding a society in totality. And then first is holism in totality, understanding in totality. Second is cross-cultural comparison, means comparatively understanding two different societies is also an essence. Because if I go to study the Munda tribal communities, but I do not belong to that community, I belong to community X. So since I have born and brought up in community X, I have been socialized, I have learned different patterns of culture throughout my life. So when I go and visit Munda for the first time, I would be exposed to their different practices and behaviors. So that would be very different from my own. So that automatically brings a comparative framework in my mind. Oh, this practice is different from mine. So why do people behave in such a manner when they go in a marriage dance procession? So that they dance in a particular fashion, whether boys and girls dance together, or elder members they dance or not, that would be different from the other community. So immediately a comparative framework comes to my mind. I always compare my own community with the Munda community. So this is something inherent in anthropology. So that is taken as a comparative method in anthropology. So you compare community A with community B or C or D, and try to make a sense of it. Why people do that? Why people belonging to A do in a certain fashion what B do not do, or C do not do, or D does it. And then and and we will be discussing this later on in a great deal, because this is an important issue. And sixth is the meaning, scope, and background of anthropology. And this you must have studied, but let me just give you a very very brief idea about what does it mean. So, meaning we have already discussed. Meaning, anthropology has many definitions. One of the uh, commonly used definition is study of man in time and space. Time means evolution or gradual change. How human societies and human as an animal has evolved from simpler form to the complex. Because anthropology believe that human societies change gradually, and human as an animal, as a biological product, has also changed from primate to different stages, like Homo sapiens, sorry, Homo erectus, Homo neanderthal, then Homo sapiens sapiens. So all this is a biological process of evolution. Similarly, man's society, if you take marriage as an institution, marriage has also changed over the year. If you take the society 10,000 years back when agriculture was introduced, so that was a simple society. The the rituals involved in marriages would be very very simple, not be very complex like today's society. So that has also gradually changed with the change in food production, change in interaction between groups, change in monetary economy, change in migration of people coming in contact with others. So many factors also contributed for the change. So anthropology is then studying man in time and space. Then its scope means anthropology. When you say scope, you can understand the scope from minimum two different angles. One is understanding the scope of the discipline, what the discipline can do. Second, scope means its relevance, how it can come into use, and the background. Scope means anthropology as a discipline, it has scope to apply all the tools and techniques, all the knowledges that it produces and reproduces to understand humans in a better manner. Because our core objective of the discipline is to understand human. So the scope is, as science and technology grow, anthropology as a discipline will be better equipped to understand man's evolution and variation. Because how anthropology was, or how useful anthropology as a discipline, tools and technology was 50 years back, 100 years back, and whether it is better now. Definitely, yes. So that is a scope. And scope also has a meaning like what's its application? What can you do? And now imagine, suppose you have a lot of conflicts, like we have international conflict in Gaza, we have conflict in Russia, we have conflict within our country, like in Manipur. So, how anthropology can help us to understand what is the scope? If this is a discipline to study human both in past and before past, and then before history, and then contemporary society, so the problems that affects human being, can it study, can it give us a clue why, how these conflicts have grown, how these conflicts have originated? Yes, and that is the scope, to understand human conflicts and conflict resolutions. By applying comparative method, we understand how conflicts originate. What are who are the interest group that participate in those conflicts, and then how, what kind of inferences we can receive from past conflicts, past human societies, and interaction between individuals within the society and society across. So that gives us clue. And there are examples where anthropologists or anthropological knowledges have been used to understand those conflicts and conflict resolutions. Now, suppose if you want to understand economic activities between groups, so that also helps us. Anthropology helps us to understand the interaction, because if you go to how societies have evolved, so let me take a very linear view of how societies have evolved. One is, suppose from initial society, hunting and gathering. Then you have pastoralism. Then you have agriculture. Then industrial society. Then postmodern, post-industrial society. If you, in a linear way, and this is how societies have evolved, societies have changed over the time. If it is so, am I audible? I think.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. If you have any problem, just yeah, raise your voice. So, and and if that is so, then we need to understand how the transaction between people, the material transaction between people, how does it happen? In simple societies like the hunting and gathering society, there is not much exchange in terms of money. The exchanges are in terms of kind. If you produce rice and I produce vegetables, you need vegetables, I need. So there is an exchange. So barter system. When you go to simple societies like practicing, those who are practicing hunting, gathering, or pastoralism, or early stage of economy, sorry, agriculture, so there is a barter system. But as we move on, then in agriculture sector, so there are different kinds of production which I may need, I may not need. Then there will be monetary or still some form of barter system goes on. But as you go to industrial society, so there is currency, whether currency like, whether cryptocurrency that is being used, or notes, coins, or you have coins of gold, silver, bronze, whatever, in different time periods. So coins or currency becomes a medium through which people exchange their materials that they produce or co-produce. So so that becomes interesting. So anthropology gives a clue how people transact in everyday life. So some people are also interested in this. And there are also, now you will see, something invisible trade, like trades we do not see the material when we buy, and what we exchange we also sometimes do not see it. Currency you do not see. Suppose if you pay by phone pay, you do online marketing through internet, so that is also a different kinds of market. So anthropologists are also interested in understanding different kinds of market, whether it is daily market, weekly market, or market in a neighborhood, or mall or supermarket, or it is a market which is quite invisible happening in internet. So anthropologists are also interested in how people transact between them living in different parts, because people, suppose if you go to the Bonda tribes of Malkangiri in Koraput district of Odisha, or Malkangiri district of Odisha. So if you go to the higher bondas, because there are two different kinds of bondas, one is living in the plain and then the hills. So their mode of transaction, they have also joined the monetary economy, uh, transacted through currency. But there are some villages, if you go to the interior, still barter system is the major mode of transaction. So anthropologists give a clue how different people transact between them, and what is the both advantages and disadvantages, keeping in mind their living condition and where do they live. So the scope is that gives us a comparative account of different kinds of practices that is existing, that existed in the past, that is existing today. And the next item would be, I think, the growth and development of anthropology during Renaissance period and the period of Enlightenment. I think this is mostly referring to the development of this discipline in Europe. Let me give you just one example of what it refers to. I think how the Renaissance or scientific temper that developed in Europe in 17th century, that had a great deal of influence on how we understand human society. If you take human as a biological being and try to understand human evolution, so there are a number of theories that explain human evolution, or how human as a species grew, and how as a discipline we can understand. We were looking at, for example, the human differences based on skin color, head form, nose form, the way people look. But as science and technology developed, for example, how Mendelian rule of inheritance or genetics, and how Darwin's law of natural selection grew in Europe, that had great influence on anthropology as a subject to reinvent itself, to redefine the methods and tools that was used to explain human evolution and variation. So that would be the thing for us to understand the way Renaissance and development of anthropology in the period of Enlightenment. Because before that, if you look at how influence of science and technology, especially genetic science or science of inheritance, had a great influence. Because Europeans, as they moved on and went to different parts of the globe to colonize people, they had a feeling of superiority complex. They thought that they are superior, especially the white skinned people are superior to the dark skin and other skin color, people from other skin color. But as science grew and the evidence from genetics explain that there is not much difference. Now genomic science says 99.99% we are same. Only 0.01% we are different from others. Means human beings of different kinds or different so-called racial groups. different ethnic groups. There is similarity of 99.99%. Suppose an Indian will be 99.1999% same with an African or European or American. Only difference 0.1%, 0.01%. And another statement is there is much more similarity between intra-group, between Indian and African than within Indian or than within African. So differences are less if people are also distant. So that is also interesting to understand. So how we understand this? This is because of an outcome of scientific temper that gradually developed in Europe and also passed on to other parts of the globe. And so these are all few examples. And then number 8 is anthropology as a natural, social, and humanizing science. So this is interesting. If you look at Franz Boas, he made a very strong, important statement. He said anthropology is more humanistic among the science and more scientific among the humanities. So, anthropology is a discipline that comes under both natural sciences and also social sciences. And it is most scientific discipline among all the humanistic disciplines. Like it is more scientific among all the scientific among the humanistic. Like if you compare the methods used by the discipline of history, economics, political science, psychology. So anthropology, the methods are used is more scientific because in a scientific way it tries to understand human. And if it comes under life sciences, botany, zoology, biotechnology, or other sciences, it says it is more humanizing. It is more humanistic because it has humanistic approach to that. So, so anthropology as a study, as a discipline, it is scientific because it applies all scientific methods to understand human. So it is a, and then next is how anthropology is unique in terms of its holistic perspective. So as we discussed, anthropology is unique because both it applies the holistic approach, both kind of field science and laboratory science, both empirical studies and also scientific studies. So, anthropology is very unique. Unlike other disciplines, either there are disciplines who work only in the laboratory, other disciplines who work in the field or in the library or with the books. But anthropology combines all different kinds of tools to understand humans. And the next is it is comprehend about the different branches of anthropology. So now, if you want to understand anthropology, then you have to understand different facets of human life because anthropology tries to understand human and its life. And human life is a very diversified field. Human has interest in everything. For example, environmental science, understanding in ecology. So ecology means man's relationship with biotic and abiotic, both living and non-living being relating to humans. So comprehending all different branches that affects human can also come under anthropology. And then another area of inquiry would be the objective of this paper would be to interpret how current realms can be explored within the subject. And it is anthropology is not only about prehistoric past or historic past or contemporary, but it can cover all and especially the current problem. Like as I said, the conflicts or suppose agricultural development or scientific development, health issues or mental health related issues, all the different kinds of issues that affects human beings can also come under the purview of anthropology. Then applied aspect of anthropology. If we look at how anthropology can be applied, because these are the things which are very, very important because later on we'll be discussing about methods methodology being used by anthropologists. So it will be very, very important that we understand the application of anthropology. For example, suppose take three, four examples. One from anthropology, one from political life, one from economic life, one from cultural life. So I would take and let us examine what are the applied aspect of anthropology. Let me give you one example from my life experience. I had been to I study the tribes in Odisha, particularly the particularly vulnerable tribal groups, PVTGs. So there are 62 tribal groups. There are more than 700 tribal communities live in India, out of which 62 tribal groups live in Odisha. Out of these 62, there are 13 tribes which are known as PVTG, particularly vulnerable tribal groups. These particularly vulnerable tribal groups have very innovative or very different kinds of practices with respect to their health. One of the practices in many tribal communities is to give what in Odia we called it chenko. Like they give hot iron and then put it on their body so that the skin, especially around the navel part, should get the heat. And they believe that if they do it, then many of the incurable diseases that would come to the life of the young one, he would be saved or he would be cured. So that is the belief. And there are some medicine men, some shaman living in those communities practice it. And this is a very age old practice. Now, in the modern era, when we denounce or we just throw away all those practices by the tribal communities, saying it as blind belief, and we ask them to go to modern medical health facilities for better health care. But the thing is, people still largely they go to the hospital but still practice it. Most of the time, if the baby is within 6 months, they give all this chinko. So the question is, why do people do it? There's a lot of advertisement in radio, in televisions, in newspapers, in hoardings, and there are health functionaries at the grassroots level, like the Asa Didi, the Anganwadi workers, the ANMs, then the hospital. Then there are so many health infrastructure being there. And Asa Didi visits almost every household at least once in a month. But still, why this kind of practices still continue? And this is a current problem, a current health problem. And can anthropology, with specialization in understanding human behavior or human practices, can it give us any idea why people still continue? And in comparison to anthropology, are there any other discipline that can give better answer? I think so. This comes under application of anthropology in healthcare. And what would be the anthropologist's contribution here? Anthropologist's contribution would be to understand human behavior, why people behave, what people do, the way they do, because they have their explanation about what do they practice. We may find it very unreasonable, very unscientific, and full of blind belief, because we are seeing from a very distant culture. And as I gave the example that we always have a comparative method, I was brought up in my own culture, so I will always compare my own culture and feel that my culture is superior to the other. Similarly, when we go to see all these, the Chenka, the example of this Chenka in tribal areas, then we always feel that that is a blind belief. They're very backward, so they're doing it. Because I see that practice from the prism of my own experiences of living in my own society, where currently it is not being practiced, it is seen as unscientific. But if I ask as an anthropologist, I should be very humble in asking them and in getting their own perspective into this practice. They would have very different practice. They would say that Okay, every year I should propitiate or I should offer something to the local deity or local god. So he will be in harmony, nature will be in harmony with us. And since the shaman or the priest or the medicine man who understand the wishes of the supernatural power, and he can see what is going to happen, and he sees that if we do not do this practice, something bad is going to happen in the future. And we have been doing it for centuries, nothing has happened, our ancestors have survived because of this, and we will do it. If we do it, the children's health will be good, he will become a strong adult. So this is their belief. So what we do as an application discipline, the discipline has a lot of application value. We understand, okay, this is the way people interpret, this is the way people believe, and they explain their life practices. They have their own scientific method of understanding. And someone would say, no, this is what is very unscientific, this is full of blind belief. Maybe from our perspective that is true, but they would ask you, if we are full of blind belief, then you people are, you are highly educated, but how for your own development you are cutting the trees, you are cleaning the forest? Is it not unscientific? Is it not against sustainability? Because you are so greedy, you are concerned about your own generation, you are not concerned about the next generation. So who is more full of unscientific ideas? Because your approach to life is very unscientific, very unsustainable. So you have no answer. So this simple society, they have some explanation. Anyway, I think we do not have any answer to that. What is good, what is bad. And as a discipline, that is not our job. Our job is to understand why people believe in a particular manner, what makes them to believe the way they believe, and to get an idea, have a comparative perspective of how people behave differently and what are the reasons, context they cite as an explanation to that. So this kind of practice help us in applied field. We all understand this people's different views. Similarly, in economic life also, why people do certain crops in a certain manner. For example, why suppose the Juanga tribe or Hill Khadia tribe, why do they practice terrace cultivation? Which they would they would cultivate a patch of land in the hilly areas. Next year they will burn and thrash it, and they will leave it. After 2 years they will come back. Why do they do burn and thrash this cultivation? They do it because we think that that is anti-environment. But they would have a very different explanation. They say that if you do the podu chasa, then it is land is fertile, and we do not deforest or kill the trees, cut the trees just indiscriminately. We cut the trees proportionately because whatever we need, we only cultivate that much. We do not do harm to the forest. And scientific studies have shown that what do they practice is more scientific because they go for mixed cropping. They only cultivate the land that they require because that is a self-sustained economy, and they are not greedy for the next generation. Sorry, greedy for their own life. So that is more scientific. So these kind of application oriented knowledge system, the traditional knowledge system, which is more sustainable, because the kind of greedy society, needy and greedy based society we have, so that is not going to last for 3 4 generations. We'll have tremendous problem, and that becomes the cause for global warming, cause for all these natural calamities that we have. So, this application of anthropology is also to provide clues for all the social, economic, environmental related problems that we get the knowledge from the simple societies. So, similarly, use of anthropology in management of corporate world. So, anthropology is also not about simple societies, tribal societies, marginalized groups. It is also about all different kinds of human activities. That also involves people living in industrial world. Suppose corporate, how people behave in a corporate sector, in industry, whether it is agricultural industry or handloom industry or medicine manufacturing industry or heavy industry, what any kind of industry. So how people behave. So uh, a company or a manufacturing company can be equated with a village society where people interact. So anthropologists are also interested in management of corporate world. For example, let me give you one example. Suppose if you consider Japan, Japan is a very small country, small in size in East Asia. It is very small in size, but economically it is very prosperous, very developed country. You name any automobile, leading automobile, any camera, electronic gadget, most of them are manufactured, or the base of the company, owner of the large company is Japanese. But if you look at how Japanese companies behave, because they also have, there is one famous anthropologist named Nakane Chie. She has written a book on vertical society. India is a vertical society. I'm forgetting the title of the book, complete title, but it's like Indian society or vertical structure of India, something like that. So, very famous anthropologist. She has explained the Indian caste system and also Japanese system. And there are other books where it is written about Japanese characteristic, like Ruth Benedict's work on sword and chrysanthemum. She has studied Japanese national character, where she has shown how Japanese characters. Japanese national character is based on both very contradictory characters. Chrysanthemum is a very soft flower in Japanese in Japan, and sword is very hard. Sword, so it Japanese character is a combination of very soft like a flower and very hard and harsh like a sword. Similarly, other studies show in Japan, if you are working in a company, you should be completely committed to the company. And people work in a company. If somebody is working in Sony or Panasonic or any Canon or any company, they would, or Toshiba or any, they would continue working in that company till they die. They normally do not change companies because they are committed to the company. And companies also take care of the employees, and they give lot of, suppose whatever is the profit, some share is also equally distributed among the shareholders and the employees. So there is a lot of protection. But why I'm giving this example is in the context of management of corporate world. And if a company takes a decision, and suppose there are 100 employees in a company, and they're also hierarchical. Some people are in the lower ladder of the society, in the middle, and in the top. If the top one, if the president of the company takes a decision, everybody else, even if they have very different personal views, they would abide by what the company takes the decision, what the president says. If they say we will support this political party, this political leader, or we'll go by this decision, so they would all, even if they have very strong personal opinions, but they would go by the decision taken by the higher ups. So this is in corporate world, this is taken as a very positive thing. It is also taken as a very negative thing. But it has worked well for Japanese society, and they have performed well, done well with this system. So this kind of study, this kind of cultural behavior, or the mentality of people working in a system, and but in the modern management structure, people have different views, and then there's a democratic way of doing it. But in Japan, democracy is taken place only when there is a discussion, when they discuss to take a decision. But once the decision is taken, so everybody abides by that. So that is a very typical decision making culture that takes place in corporate world. So anthropologists are also interested in this kind of pattern in understanding why it is happening. And anthropology in policy making and governance. So anthropologists are also they are also interested in policy making and governance. And especially after 1950s, 60s, and 70s, during that period, when colonized, I'm giving example from health field. So when all these colonies were freed, like in India got freedom in 1947. So many of the colonies throughout the world, whether it is in Asia or Africa or South America, almost all of them got free by 1950s, most of them. So then, number of the Second World War, number of agencies also came in, international agency like United Nations, World Health Organization, and many other. They came to protect the marginalized countries, those who were poor, those who were colonized. So these agencies also for world peace and order, but they also invested a lot of money in health sector, in sector of agriculture. So many anthropologists went there as consultants or giving advice for formulation of policy, because all policies were geared to address local needs. For example, in the initial stage of malaria eradication or polio eradication or eradication of, for example, leprosy or tuberculosis. For example, tuberculosis. If the treatment was for 4 months, one patient has to come to the hospital continuously for 4 months. The medicine were given by the lower health functionaries at the doorstep, because there was a realization that patient would not come to the hospital or the service center, because there is a lot of social stigma and discrimination attached to the disease. So the project got failed. It was not successful because people did not turn up to the hospital. And even if they turned up, the medicine was given to them, they did not continue it. And after the project period was got over, there was a review. And in most of the reviews, it was realized that okay, we can give money, we can give manufacture medicines for them, we can have infrastructure to reach to the people, but still people are not accepting it. People are not taking the medicine, not getting cure. So what why it is happening? So they appointed anthropologists as experts to understand, because anthropologists are believed to be experts to understand human behavior and human culture, and what prohibits or what really becomes a stumbling block in people's behavior towards something. So there were many American anthropologists who were appointed with this agencies like WHO, United Nations, many missions. So they realized, so there is a CAP study, KAP study, knowledge, attitude, and practice. Of course, this term was not used then, but all these three factors, people, because there is a knowledge need to be given to the people to understand, and then they should have positive attitude to take the medicine. And even if they have knowledge, they have positive attitude, but what do they practice? You may make an awareness about the impact of tuberculosis. You may tell them that okay, by taking medicine you can get completely cured. They understand it, but they take the medicine, they take it for 2 3 days, 5 days, and they don't continue it for full month. And this is what similar kinds of things are also happening now. If you go to tribal areas, especially for, I'm just digressing and changing example. uh, if you go to tribal areas, especially in rural areas also, pregnant women, there are programs, Anani Surakha and others, where people, the system gives iron folic acid to pregnant women, so that the hemoglobin content in body is high, and the would be child, the pregnant child would be healthy, and there will be normal birth. But most of the tribal areas and villages we visited, They say Asa Didi has given us the medicine, the tablet, and we have taken for few days, and thereafter we have stopped. So why did you stop? They say if we continued iron folic acid, then the baby in the mother's womb would be very healthy, very fat, and the mother may not have normal delivery. And if there is no normal delivery, and mother has to be admitted in to hospital through institutional delivery, and there will be cesarean. And if there is cesarean, the mother cannot work for 2 weeks. The father, as a care provider or assistant to the mother, may also lose wage for a month. And if there is cesarean delivery, the mother also may not be strong enough to go to the field again and work to support her family. So these are the economic and cultural practices. And if the birth takes place in the hospital, it is not good for the child. The spirit, the goddesses may not be very happy if you give birth outside the village. So this may or may not have a scientific basis, but people have all these different kinds of belief systems. Until unless you cater to this kind of cultural behaviors or the belief system that people have, so it will be very, very difficult to make the project a success. So that is why anthropologists who are expert in understanding the cultural practices, the belief systems, the norms and values that specific societies and culture have, so it will be very difficult to make the project work. So that is why anthropology as a discipline have lot of application in, as I gave the example from health, similar example can also be found in the field of agriculture, in the field of politics, of governance and decision making, in different works of life of people. So anthropology is a uniquely placed discipline that has both theoretical value to make us understand a human society and the behavior of people, and also help us in devising policy programs based on the findings from diverse societies and culture. So that has application value. So these objectives would serve the purpose of understanding the subject matter of anthropology in great detail in the following units. Then I think I will just take 2 minutes break. A break in the sense I would take questions if you have any, because if I go on in a single track, and you may not understand, so it will have less value. Rather than that, I think I will also decide to take few questions or clarification if you have. Then we can proceed after 2 minutes to the next part. Yes. Any question or query? Anybody? Any question you can ask.
କିଏ ରେ?
Yes. Any question? You can use any language. English, Hindi, Odia, the three languages that I can understand and speak. Otherwise, we just take 30 seconds break and then continue. Okay, friends, I think let us also begin. Because as I was told, I think we have to I have to take 8 classes to cover the course syllabus. There are six, I think, units. Are you all listening? And really, you do not have any question from what we have discussed?
No, sir.
No, sure. Okay, okay. Because I don't want it to go just single way that I will be talking and you will just listen and don't understand, or you understand but you do. If you understand, if you really have questions, just ask. I think the question can be simple or complex. I may or may not be able to answer all the question, but asking question is important. You may get answer from me, or you may get answer from some other in now or future, but you must always ask questions from whatever you have heard.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes. Yeah,
I have
please,
a question.
please,
Are
please.
shaman and priest and men are all
Yes.
same?
Yes, good question. I think sometimes it is same person doing all different. The activities are different. The work they do are different. But sometimes the single person can do all the three things, or three different people can do three things. Let me explain what exactly these three terms means and what do they do. Suppose priest. Priest's work is he work as an intermediary between the supernatural power, the so-called God or nature, whatever. There are number of gods and goddesses, nature-based, that the tribals believe. So priest's job is to act between the supernatural that people cannot see, but they talk about, they realize, and then the commoners, like the people, like people in the society. So they interpret whether the supernatural power is happy, good crop, or the supernatural power. I think somebody called Soumyaranjan Sahu. Can you, sir, mute? Soumyaranjan Sahu, can you mute? Because that is creating trouble. Soumyaranjan Sahu, can you mute? Yeah, if the coordinator can do it, please. So, yeah, so priest is somebody who propitiates, who do the puja on behalf of the commoner to satisfy the supernatural power of the god and goddesses. Okay, so and priest is a hereditary thing in tribal life, not strictly, but loosely hereditary. Somebody is a priest, his son and grandson would become priest. And the medicine man is somebody who has knowledge about the nature, the natural products, whether they are plant based or animal based, who is can work to cure or heal the health issues of people. This is a medicine man whose ingredients are mainly plant based, or sometimes it is based on a matter, whether animal sourced or plant sourced. And shaman is somebody who is an expert who also has knowledge about the supernatural power and his both positive and negative impacts. But again, the tool that he used may or may not be. Suppose a herbalist or medicine man, he uses plant products, but shaman may or may not use any plant products. He will have tantras, you have mantras, you have words, you will have touch power, all these things, and he may or may not have plant source medicines. And one person can be priest, can be shaman, can be medicine man, or three different people can also. Yes,
Okay.
Swati.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Got it.
Okay.
Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other question? ସାର୍ ସୌମ୍ୟରଞ୍ଜନ ସାହୁ ସାର୍ ଟିକେ ମ୍ୟୁଟ୍ କରିବେ କି ଆପଣ? ଟିକେ ଡିଷ୍ଟର୍ବ ହେଉଛି। ସୌମ୍ୟରଞ୍ଜନ ସାହୁ, I think is on mute. So anyway, so let us also move forward. And in the next chapter, unit 3, you have branches of anthropology. And you must have studied it like physical or biological anthropology, history and development, social and cultural anthropology, history and development and current fields, archaeological anthropology, again, history and development and its current field of study, and linguistic anthropology. So it will be easier. You can, from your text, you can study the history and development and current fields of physical anthropology. I think physical anthropology grew gradually and established itself as a human science with the amalgamation of various sciences by venturing into new areas with the application of already existing concepts and new ideas. I think physical anthropology, if you
Physical
look at,
anthropology, if you look at
hello, this Soumya Ranjan Sahu, can I ask the coordinator to mute him? Dr. Uma, I don't know if there is anybody from IGNO, if you can mute Soumya Ranjan Sahu. Oh, he has, okay. Anyway, so physical anthropology started in 18th century, like Blumenbach. And he is considered as a first prominent physical anthropologist. Many called him as father of physical anthropology, who invented the study of craniology, through which he made 5 major classification of human race, like Caucasian, Mongolian, Malay, Ethiopian, and American. So Blumenbach, Frederick Blumenbach, he lived around 1752 to 1840. Many people called him as anthropology. What he studied, what he done is he has invented the study of craniometry. Craniometry means the study of the cranium. Scientific study of cranium means our skull, our head of dead persons. So he developed some metrics to understand the structure of the head, structure of the skull, like taking length, breadth, and then dividing number of indices by applying the method breadth by length into 100, and then he classified based on different patterns and size of head. He classified people living in. Mr. Soumyaranjan Sahu, can you mute? Soumyaranjan Sahu, can you mute? Yeah. Hello. Anyway, so what Blumenberg did is, so he classified the people living in all over the world into 5 different categories. Many people have criticized that later on, but many people have tried similar things by including other criteria to study human diversity. Because how we say that the race in the world can be broadly 3 kinds. White skinned people are Caucasoid, dark skinned people are Negroid, yellow skinned people are Mongoloid. And these are the 3 major races. But how do people do it? People do it based on skin color. But Blumenbach, he said skin color is not very scientific. He studied the cranium, the size of the head, the shape of the head, and he devised statistical calculation based on which classified world population into 5 as Caucasians, white skin, Mongolians, yellow skin, Malayan, brown skin, Ethiopian as black skin, and Americans. When I say American, it's not the current white skin Americans, but the Native Americans having very brownish white complex color. And on the basis of the skull findings. So not on living beings, human beings, but on skull. And he was a student of Carl Linnaeus. Carl Linnaeus is a figure who did the scientific study of classification of living beings, and who was the exponent of zoology and included humans in the classification of primates. And during 30s and 40s of the 19th century, means 1830 and 1840, there was a heated debate related to human race being monogeneous or polygynous. Carlos Pritchard, an English physician and ethnologist who was supporter of monogeny, believed that all races were derived from Adam, conforming to the biblical notion of pre-creation. While American physician Samuel George Morton advocate polygyny, which proposed that humanity could not be attributed to have begun from a single species, but that humans came from several species, leading to various races. Morton used anthropometric measurement to study human physical variation. He was largely read and discussed in the scientific world in Europe and America in the latter part of the 19th century. So let me give simple explanation to this. I think during 1830s and 40s, there is a great debate in Europe, especially in Europe, especially one person called James Pritchard, who was an English physician and ethnologist. He was a supporter of monogeny, which means he said all different kinds of humankind or races, like black people, white people, brown people, yellow people, they have come from one. Like people believed in Bible of the Christian, which believed in Adam and Eve. There is one man and one woman who produced, and we are the offspring of Adam and Eve. That's a strong Christian religious belief. In Hindu also, we heard similar kind of thing, like Brahmanka Naviru Samasta Janma Hoisante. Because all the human race that you see, all the animals, we have been produced by Brahma, Brahma's Navi. But later on, when evolution came, Lamarckism, biological evolution, Lamarckism, Darwinism, synthetic theory, all those say evolution gradually happened. Change happened gradually is evolution. We have come from simpler form, simple form of animal to the complex. And especially primate, monkey-like character, monkey to ape, ape to man. So monogeny is not correct. So there are others also, like Samuel Joyce Morton, who advocate polygyny. He said the current diversity or differences that you see in humans living in different parts of the world, they have come from different stock, different species, not one. But now with the modern science, we know that if you have studied basic of anthropology, you must have studied out of Africa origin, or the recent advances in genetic science like genomics explain that, especially mitochondrial DNA that we all have. Mitochondrial DNA suggests that there is a mitochondrial DNA is found in the female. So our ancestors are from Africa. Wherever we may live in the world now, but all of our ancestors were from Africa. Then we have migrated to different parts of the globe. We have settled in different climatic condition. That is why all the racial differences, the skin color, the nose form, the epicanthic fold, the head form, the height, everything that defines a population group, but and they are different from each other. Like Africans are very dark in color, Europeans are white in color, Indians are brown in color, and within India also there are different types. But all of us, only 150,000 to 200,000, means 1.5 lakh to 2 lakh वर्ष, 1.5 lakhs to 2 lakhs years. During that period, people have, our ancestors have migrated from Africa, and they have dispersed or they have migrated to different parts. And since they adapted to very different climatic conditions, they are different now. For example, people who are living in the equatorial zone, ଯୋଉଠି ସୂର୍ଯ୍ୟଙ୍କ କିରଣ ଅଧାରେ ପଡେ, ମଝିରେ ଅଛନ୍ତି। ଯେହେତୁ ସେଠି ସନଲାଇଟ୍ ଇଜ ଭେରି ଷ୍ଟ୍ରଙ୍ଗ, and in order to protect your skin from ultraviolet rays of the sunlight, you develop a melanin pigment in the skin. So melanin pigment help people to protect the skin. So that is why people have very dark skin. People who live in polar region, which is very very cold, they do not have enough sunlight. They do not need pigment, melanin pigment under the skin. So they are white. Since they have been living there for 50,000, 70,000, 1 lakh, 1 lakh 20,000, their ancestors have been living in those cold climate. So their skin color is white. And since people who migrate, they are not, do not live in isolated. They also intermarry, intermingle with each other. So there are also intermediary skin color or intermediary body form. So that is the explanation we have from modern science. And that is also supported by genetic science or genomics that developed just 2 decades back. But all these arguments of monogeneity and polygeneity are not scientific. This is what we hear from development of physical anthropology. And around the same time, anthropological tradition started to gain around with French anthropologist and physician Paul Broca, becoming founder of Anthropological Society in Paris in 1859 and Revue d'Anthropologie in 1872 and the School of Anthropology in Paris 1876, because France has a very strong tradition of anthropology, especially physical anthropology, earlier and now cultural anthropology. He made huge advances in study of cranial anthropometry. Cranial anthropometry is measurement of cranium or head of the dead person, thus paving the way for the development study of physical anthropology. And in Germany, Rudolf Virchow, and simultaneously, like in France, in Germany also, this has a strong tradition. One of the founders of social medicine opined on how human beings changed gradually and the role of environment and disease on it. So, Rudolf Virchow is also one of the initial thinkers of medical anthropology who has studied human behavior and health and social medicine. He said this environment and disease combination, because he said disease is an outcome of complex interaction between man and his ecology, man and his environment. So this is something very excellent result that people in the initial stage they have worked and they have said. So this is what Birko was said. And then you also have Hadilka, Alice Hadilka, who is synonymous to the development of physical anthropology at the Smithsonian Institute of America. And then Hutton from Harvard University in USA. And they have published in American Journal of Physical Anthropology, where they are also encouraged and creation of American Association of Physical Anthropology in 1930. And Hutton also very famous physical anthropology who have also gone for racial classification, classifying humankind or human population living in different parts. So physical anthropology entered its modern realm only in the 19th century with Franz Boas. Franz Boas, you must be knowing, is treated as father of American anthropology. And he's an academic in the Columbia University, not only stressed on the variability of human physically, but also emphasized on the study of human races in terms of culture. So Franz Boas talked not only about physical anthropology and physical differences, variation in people, also cultural variation in people. And most understanding of study of culture can be heard in the second part of the unit. You will study. Then you have many people like George William Krugman, Dudley Morton, Adolf Schultz, William Strauss, All these people, they have also contributed to physical anthropology. And around 1950s and 60s, physical anthropology took a different turn, where fieldwork tradition was reintroduced. Like, fieldwork tradition is a tradition that is largely practiced in social and cultural anthropology, but physical anthropologists, they did not limit themselves only to study the craniometry. Cranium means you have head for living humans, but you have cranium for dead humans. Skull जोटा रखा हो से skull रो mainly a physical anthropologist ମାନେ study କରୁଥିଲେ ତାପରେ ଆସିଲେ कि they have studied the living human beings and tried to explain the diversity and differences between humans based on physical features. Then you have scholars like L.S.B. Leakey, John Godwell, uh, John Goodall. Goodall is a person who studied primate behavior. Like, if you go to Nandankanan, you see, or any zoo, a national level zoo, big zoo, then you see gorillas, chimpanzees. Chimpanzees is considered to be our close ancestors. We also physical anthropologists, especially after Goodall, there was a study to observe primate behavior, how primates behave, and those things have also been done by physical anthropologists John Goodall, Dan Force, etc., contributed study of naturalistic science in anthropology, like studying the nature and other humans, how primates behave, and from that we can understand a lot of things about our own behavior. Suppose the way we care. Let me give small examples here. Um, uh, like, human being, as I said earlier, is one of the few species or only species that have a complex language, both oral, written, and this written can also be now typewritten, can be transmitted to large number of people through newspaper media. Can you imagine any other animal which has such an elaborate form of language? No. No other language will no other animal will have such a elaborate words, vocabularies, no written documents, no newspaper, no television, nothing. And second characteristic of human is we are bipedal. We walk on two legs, stand erect. No other. Can you imagine any other animal which can stand erect, which can walk on two legs? No other animal. If suppose dogs, goat, they can stand on two legs, but very momentary, for few seconds or minutes, not for long. And how it has happened? It has happened through the process of evolution. Standing erect or straight and walking on two legs is a biological process that makes our species more advanced, more advantageous in exploiting the nature, in making use of the nature for for our advantage, for our benefit. Maybe some other time we can discuss this. So these are the fields of physical anthropology. And if you look at what are the sub branches of physical anthropology, the sub branches is one is paleanthropology, paleoanthropology. Paleo means study of fossils. By studying fossils, where fossils means some natural remnants from the old life that has been preserved in the nature, either in the soil or in other forms, that tells us about the history, tells us about the prehistoric past from the evidence of fossils. Sometimes we have skull as evidence, sometimes we have stone tools as evidence, but fossils are also the evidence from which we can study the past. Then paleoprimatology, like primates, our ancestors, we can study through fossils of different animals, those who are primates, and understand their behavior so we can trace our history. Then osteology, branch of physical anthropology that studies the bones. Osteology helps in two ways, at least two ways. One, by studying osteology, we understand the physical features of past humans, our ancestors. 1 lakh, 2 lakh, 5 lakh, 1 million years ago, how people were. By studying small number of skeletons, like the teeth, like jaw, like fragment of head, a skull, by a cranium. By studying that, we can reconstruct the structure, how they were, how Neanderthals look, how Australopithecus look. By studying their bones, we can do that. And second, use of osteology is for forensic evidence. There is a branch called forensic anthropology. Forensic anthropology helps to understand evidences and the use of evidences for for legal jurisdiction. Suppose there is a crime happened, and who is the perpetrator, who has caused this, can be understood by understanding the bone. Suppose somebody has killed somebody, suppose 20 years back, and there is no evidence. Now, if you dig the soil and get some bones, now you can relate it, understand the age and sex of the person, match it with police records, and find out clue for to understand the criminal. So this comes under forensic anthropology. Then you have human genetics. Human genetics is study of inheritance pattern, how people inherit different diseases from their parents. And there are three or four major causes of death and three kinds of diseases. One is communicable diseases or contagious or diarogo. Second is non-communicable diseases, which is otherwise called lifestyle diseases. It is not contagious, but it is related to your lifestyle, like diabetes, blood pressure, heart diseases, cancer. These are all non-communicable diseases. Then you have third kind of disease, that is genetic disorders. So many communities are have more prevalence of genetic disorder in their community. So anthropologists are also interested. For example, sickle cell anemia, thalassemia, G6PD, PTC. These are some genetic disorders that is prevalent in tribal areas and many groups, communities. So anthropologists study human genetics. Then population genetics. Population genetics is how genetic characteristics transmit from one generation to other and at the population level. Then you have molecular anthropology. Molecular anthropology is a branch of physical anthropology that use the molecular analysis. Like as I said, mitochondrial DNA that helps us to trace our ancestry from Africa to the present places in the world. So it is only through molecular anthropology that we come to know about this. We can trace our ancestry. 1 lakh years back, one suppose if you are interested in the previous your father, your grandfather, grandfather, then 3, 4, 5, 6 generations back, where were your grandparents? From where did they migrate? But can you answer who were your ancestors 20 generation back, 25 generation, 50, 100, 200, 500 generations back? No. We are unable to trace because we do not have a written record, we do not have memory going thus far. But genetic evidences, molecular anthropology, by taking some blood samples from you, can be useful in tracing your ancestry. Suppose whether your ancestry were coming, they came from through North India or through Southeast Asia, whatever, they can do it, and people are able to do it now. Then human variation, as I said, racial classification, looking at the way we look different physically. So that is, and then human growth and development. Human growth and development is another branch of physical anthropology, which help us to understand how people grow, how people attain puberty, adolescence, adulthood, then in case of female, menopause and old age, and how do they die, and what happens physically to people, why people suffer from disease. And now we know that it is because of the complex interaction between environment and genetics that dictate how we grow. If you are born from healthy parents, but for some reason you do not get good food, you may not attain good health or average height and weight that is desired from a healthy parent. It is because of social factor of supply of food or how people belonging to specific group or country have they are tall, some people are dwarf. Suppose people from Netherlands or Holland, their average height is around 6 feet. And if you compare people with Japan or Korea or Eskimos, their average height is 4.5 or 4.3. So why it is happening? How it is happening? Why some people are very tall? Why some people are some dwarf? And whether people's bodily structure, suppose very tall figure, long hands and legs, or people who are living in high altitude like mountainous areas, whether their calf muscle is strong, whether epicanthic fold means the muscle mass above their eyes. If you look at the Nepalese, so ତାଙ୍କର ଯୋଉ ଆଖିର ଯୋଉ ପତା ଅଛି କଣରେ ସେଟା ଦେଖିବ ମାଡ଼ି ଯାଇଛି ତଳ ଆଖି ତଳକୁ ଦେଖିବା ପାଇଁ. So this is called epicanthic fold. Whether people living in cold regions, they have a different body structure. And if you look at which race of people, which kind of people win Olympics. Suppose people from Jamaica, people from Kenya, people from African countries, they hold first, second, third position in 100-meter race, 200-meter race, 10,000-meter race. Why it is happening that some people belonging to a racial group do well in sports, certain kind of sports. So, does it have anything to do with anthropology? Yes. Sports anthropologists are interested in understanding what kind of body physiology, body physique, and what kind of body type is suited for what kind of sports. So, this is also area of human growth and development. Then, human ecology, man's relationship with the biotic, abiotic, or living and non-living beings around them. Then forensic anthropology, as I said, forensic anthropology is applied portion of physical anthropology where techniques developed are used for identification of human remains in legal scenario, like all different body parts, whether skeleton, muscle mass, blood, any DNA marker like part of skin, hair, or bone that can be used for legal jurisprudence, any crime to solve a criminal act. So that is used by forensic anthropology. Then comes demography. Demography is study of population structure, distribution, and change. This is what is also another area of physical anthropology that help us in how people migrate, how people produce or fertility, how people die or mortality. So fertility, mortality, and migration. These are also major areas under demography that physical anthropologists are interested in. So these are broadly these are the topics that physical anthropologists cover. So uh, the objectives of anthropology, and then history and development of physical anthropology, and the scope of anthropology in general, especially physical anthropology. And then we have three more parts to cover in the next class. That is history and development of sociocultural anthropology, prehistoric archaeology, and linguistic anthropology, and also scope of these branches. So I think we would stop here. But before I stop, maybe I can take a few questions if you have. So we can have 5 to 10 minutes or 5 minutes if you have any clarification, questions, or comments to make. So you are free to do that. Otherwise, from my side, this is closed. I will wait for your comments. can see few names like Arpita, Barsha, Divya, Sarmisha, Swati, Tattvamasi. So if you have any queries or questions, please ask me. Otherwise, in case you do not have any question now, but if you want to ask in the next class also, you can write down your questions, read your text, and still if you have any questions, we can discuss in the next class. Otherwise, can we stop here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Swati, no question?
No question for now. Uh,
Okay,
yes.
okay, yeah. So no question from other participants? If there is no question, so we stop here. I thank the Deputy Director or the Director, Dr. Panigrai sir, other members from IGNO and all dear participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
thank you, thank you. So you may log out.